You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Head on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
Hello there, Broncos country, and it is once again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I am your host, Carl Dumler, and with me as always I have my co-host and good friend, Mr. Nick Kendell. Is there really much to say about what happened this last week, Nick?
Well, first of all, happy holidays. Hope you had a good time with you and your family. And I know it's a very busy time of year for you. And I mostly enjoyed Christmas Eve, everything about it besides football. So, what a putrid showing.
Yep.
Really this doesn't seem like a team that has quit on Vance Joseph, but this game honestly had me questioning it. That's something that's at least he had going for him before this game. And I don't know if I'd still say they quit on him because there's still guys obviously out there playing hard, but I don't know if they're playing for him at this point. And it's pretty obvious that playing, for themselves, that's a big. Obviously, you got to take care of you and yourself first and foremost before you can worry about other stuff. But yeah, it's we got one more week to go. We're going to talk about that here, but yikes, this is not the way we hoped the season would go. And after getting 6-6 on the season after two good wins against the Steelers and the Chargers, we're back down here in the dumps and looking like a team that only improved one game off of last season. So here we are. It's unfortunate. I think this team, if you didn't have the injuries to Chris Harris Jr. and Emmanuel Sanders, we might be talking a little bit differently, but you are what your record says. And right now the Broncos are 6-9 and very likely to be 6-10 given another injury and facing a really good AFC team coming off a loss and pretty much a must-win game for them.
I can't disagree with any of that. And happy holidays to you too, sir. And like I said, everything was good but football.
Yeah.
And it just this is a season of what if. Yeah. There were some very close things that were happening that looked really good. This rookie class showing well. And last few weeks, it's just completely fallen apart. And it's just hard to get too excited because there's just not much even to cheer for in this last game for the Broncos. But it's one of those, for us, I guess we do kind of get excited because the Building the Broncos podcast is focused on all things pertaining to your Denver Broncos, especially as it relates to the upcoming NFL draft and team building. With Nick and myself being armchair GMs, we will be bringing you fresh insight and analysis each and every week in every single episode, from scouting the enemy, player value, scheme, and personnel fits, and of course some general football-related banter. You can follow myself on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH, as well as follow Nick at Nick Kendell MHH. Be sure to tweet us any questions or opinions you have because we live for talking Bronco football. And you can follow the podcast Twitter account at HuddleUpPod. Make sure you check out ours and our co-writers' written content at milehighhuddle.com, a part of 24/7 Sports, an affiliate of the CBS Sports Digital Network. We know you listeners are as football, draft, and Bronco crazy as we are, so please give us a click and subscribe to us on iTunes as well as Stitcher. And don't forget to share us on Facebook and Twitter. We wouldn't be here today without your listeners, so as a call to action, please go and take the time to go to iTunes or Spreaker to rate and subscribe to let your voices be heard on how you enjoy the show. Now, before we get going, we first want to say thank you to our great sponsor, Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/huddleup. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Again, that's www.audibletrial.com/huddleup. Well, do you want to spend much time talking about this past week?
I feel like we got to spend some time talking on it. So we should get to our stocks, stock reports, studs and duds, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And maybe just 2 up and 2 down. Keep it a little bit shorter. It is the holiday season and didn't have a chance to go back and review the game. Honestly, didn't want to go back and review the game. Yikes. But yeah, stock up for me. First guy, I'm going to say somebody that I'm planning on writing an article about this week, but Devontae Booker, somebody that I really think should be getting more usage in this offense. And now that Phillip Lindsay is down for the season with just a silly injury. I don't know, not silly because it happens, but I've never even heard of this happening before. Apparently it's an injury that's pretty common in skiers. So I guess that's a good place to have that in Denver if you're going to have that kind of injury in rehab. But yeah, just a ridiculous injury. But my number one stock up for this week, I'm going to go with Devontae Booker. He only rushed the ball 3 times, but 21 yards on the ground. He's been, honestly, I think since Phillip Lindsay's kind of slowed down, I know this is going to be blasphemy. Some people are going to really disagree with me because people dislike Booker, but I think he's been the better looking running back in the backfield over the last couple weeks, and much better looking than Royce Freeman. I mean, I'm sorry, but Royce Freeman has looked really slow. He's looked like wearing that number 28, being a little bit slow. He's looked like Monte Ball back there. Maybe it's the ankle issue is pretty serious, but I'm going to go stock up with Devontae Booker, and I think he's looked pretty good, and I'm excited to see him more this week against the Chargers. I think he deserves more touches, and if they trade him or not, or they keep him, I think there's value for him going forward, and I've been impressed with his limited touches. I mean, he had 3 carries for 21 yards, right? 7 yards per carry, but his long was only 9, so it's not like he busted off a run for 20 yards and only got 1 yard for every single other rush. He was running consistently well there. Limited touches, I get it, but still, that means something to me, as well as 3 catches for 21 yards. So, I don't know. I think stock up for Booker. I think he's somebody that the organization maybe relied too much on early on. People were having higher hopes, and then he let them down. But now people really undervalue him. So, number 1 for me, Devontae Booker. And then number 2 for me, I'm going to go with Deshaun Hamilton. 9 targets, 6 catches, and only 40 yards. But had his touchdown. I believe it was his first touchdown of his career. And he had a pretty good game. And I'm excited for him going forward. Is he going to be a wide receiver 2 for this team? He's probably better off as a wide receiver 3 just because he lacks some explosiveness. But there is hope for him being a solid contributor. And I thought he's looked better and better every single week since Sanders has gone down. So stock up for Deshaun Hamilton for me as well.
Good choices. I'm going to go his playing partner there, Cortland Sutton. 6 catches for 65 yards, another touchdown, and a nice touchdown catch in that game, and just starting to look a little bit more like he could actually emerge as their number 1 wide receiver moving forward. And I'm seeing a little bit better on his route running. I'm just kind of like Deshaun Hamilton. He's improving too since Sanders went down and showing up a little bit more. And like I said, just proven to be maybe that number 1 target moving forward. So I'm excited about him. My number 2 guy, I kind of went back and forth on this a little bit, but I'll go Adam Gotsis.
Yeah.
I think he's done pretty well. I mean, he's actually showing well as a pass rusher these last few games. That's the main thing that's really stuck out with him is he is one of the few guys up the middle of the defense, especially looking at the Raiders. I mean, they had their interior guys pretty much injured pretty bad in this game. And so I was expecting a little bit more from some of the other guys, but Adam Gotsis is the one guy that continues just to play with his heart out there. And just, like I said, he just seems to be improving, and he's a guy that I think they can really move forward, especially at that interior position.
Who's been better down the stretch, Shelby Harris or Adam Gotsis?
If we're just talking the last 3 games, I'd say Gotsis.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's incredibly close either. Gotsis has been one of the better players on that defensive front. And did you see his post-game quote?
I did not.
He was talking about how the players really just haven't been putting in the they have to take it on themselves to put in the work, and that the defensive line has been doing it. He didn't directly call anybody else out, but he made it sound like the defensive line is not super happy with how the rest of everyone has been playing. So, yeah, rightfully so. The defensive line, like I've been saying, has been keeping this unit afloat as far as the defense goes. Definitely not the back 7. They have issues there. But, I would agree with you. I think Gotsis has been playing pretty well. Here's the direct quote from Kyle Fredrickson on Twitter. He got that blue check mark, so he's legit. I think from Adam Gotsis. I think a lot of guys need to take a reality check and see where you're at. Look at what you can do to help the team. I know, especially on our defensive line, we haven't stopped. That's one thing we take pride in, and that just shows our work ethic in the room, both in the film room and on the field. So, yeah, Adam Gotsis calling him out, and I do not mind it. This is the point where you got to question everything, right? From the coaching to your own teammates, and you got to look in the mirror as well. And I think the defensive line, if anybody on this team really deserves to point the finger at anybody else, if you're including the edge rushers as the defensive line,
right?
Those are the guys that are the best on this team.
I can't disagree with you. I mean, they've definitely held that defense together and kept it from looking much, much worse than it could have been. I mean, it could have been real bad this year if some of those guys went down with injury. So kudos to him. And like I said, I think he's one of those guys. I mean, I wouldn't sign him to a long-term contract this year, but he's definitely one of those guys I could see the team being willing to invest in for the future of that defensive line. He just seems to be getting better each year. He was already pretty good stopping the run. And like I said, it just seems like it's been clicking here lately in the pass game. I'm seeing him throw guys to the side. I'm seeing him actually use some pass rush moves. Before, it just seemed like he always wanted to bull rush his guy right back into the quarterback. And obviously that only works every once in a while. But he seems to actually be doing a few more things. And so he's a guy I'm willing to say, hey, he deserves more time here in Denver. And I think some of his better days are ahead of him for sure.
Yep, and he will be on his last year of his contract next year along with Shelby Harris.
Right.
So worth monitoring going forward.
Yeah. Well, looking at some of the guys for me, stock down. I mean, Case Keenum. I mean, how can you not have him on the list after throwing 2 picks and just
missing throws?
I know you keep hearing a lot of these people talk about, well, Case Keenum has to step up his game. Case Keenum is showing exactly what he is. I don't know how else you can really say that. He's not going to be the savior here in Denver.
Nope. He's not even going to be Jake Plummer.
Right, exactly. And you would send something, and you've said this many times throughout the year. Case Keenum is one of those guys. He needs a perfect team around him to become a playoff contender. And right now, the Broncos just don't have enough pieces around him to counter his weaknesses. And then you have coaches who don't really know how to use him. It's a downhill battle from there. And it's not look good. And I just very, very disappointed in some of his game because I thought he'd be better than what he is. I didn't expect him to be this incredible quarterback or anything like that, but I expected better than bottom 5 quarterback in the league. I mean, that's just my personal opinion, but
yeah, he's maybe, I don't know, because at least maybe not the bottom 5 quarterback in the league, but a bottom 5 quarterback situation given there is practically no upside. Like at least with like Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, when they have erratic play and whatnot, there's that youth and that upside that they can grow on. I mean, Keenum's already 31, 32. Like he is what he is.
Right. So that's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah. Can't disagree. You want another stock down? Or you want to stick with the one?
I'll just go with the one. I'll try to keep it not from being a completely down podcast here for us. For sure.
And I kind of touched on it earlier, but Royce Freeman for me, another week he looked just totally pedestrian, averaged 3 yards a carry, 7 yards, and he had 1 target in the pass game. He just looks slow. He's not hitting the hole very hard. His movement, his lateral quickness is not great, and he's looking like a plotter. So it could be the ankle issue. I'm not sure about that. He was the pick I was absolutely most skeptical of this past draft class because I just thought he was a limited player. And I mean, if you're taking a running back round 3, I'm looking for, not off-field issues aside, but, Kareem Hunt level and Alvin Kamara level. I know those guys were hits as far as playing on the field, but, he just does not look anything special to me. And he hasn't looked anything special since the first half of the season. I'm not sure if it's the rookie wall. I'm not sure if it's an injury, but he just does not look great. I think Booker has looked much better down the stretch than he has. So definitely Royce Freeman for me. And then another one for me would have to be the interior offensive line. I mean, the Broncos did end up getting 100 yards, but I had, Connor McGovern, I think he's flashed at center, but he's not been great. Billy Turner's been okay, but Elijah Wilkinson, maybe there's a chance he can develop in something down the stretch, but I thought he looked overmatched there. PJ Hall gave him all he could handle, and he was struggling to work against Hankins, especially anytime he had a one-on-one. He needed a lot of help, and it kind of changed what the Broncos could do as far as picking up blitzes, and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, those would be my 2, but there's plenty of stock downs here. I mean, the entire coaching staff, probably outside of like Kugler and Azani and obviously Bill Collar. But yeah, it's a bad loss. It's a bad team. Obviously losing Chris Harris Jr. and Emmanuel Sanders, I would argue the 4th and 5th most important players on this team. Before when the Broncos were starting to win and then they lost both those guys when they had that win streak going, that totally changed things and set the season a different path. But we're at where we're at. It's It's unfortunate, but you know what? That means we can start looking forward to the draft season and getting this thing back on track, which that really matters. Moving on now to the forward progress to the loss of down section. For me, forward progress this week, honestly, I'm going to be kind of, I guess, I don't want to say petty. That's the wrong word, but the forward progress is the Broncos have a better draft pick, which is that's.
Can I use that one too?
Yeah, if you want, yeah. Well, I got a double one here. The forward progress is the Broncos have a better draft pick, but also the Raiders have a worse draft pick. In my opinion, there are 3 elite tier players in this draft class, and they're all on the defensive line. You got Nick Bosa, you got Quinnen Williams, and you got Ed Oliver. And the Raiders before this week, before the win over the Broncos, they were picking 2. They had a chance they could get Nick Bosa or maybe even Quinnen Williams, even though they took some defensive tackles, or Ed Oliver. And now they're picking number 4 overall. So that's a win. Keeping Quinnen Williams and Nick Bosa and probably Ed Oliver as well, although I'm curious to see what the NFL will think about him, given his play weight that apparently he plays at close to 275, not the 290 that he's listed on ESPN. But keeping those guys out of Oakland, I think, is a win for Denver in the long term, even though it sucks to lose a game against the Raiders.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. I guess, I mean, one thing that I will say, some of the young guys did step up, like we talked about with Sutton and Hamilton. Even Tim Patrick kind of had some decent plays there for the Broncos. And so it's kind of nice seeing some of that the Broncos can move forward. Unfortunately, with Philip Lindsay getting his injury, I don't know what the timetable exactly is on his return, but we'll kind of keep an eye on that. But no, I mean, there's still some nice building pieces that are showing well and still playing pretty hard for the Broncos. And that's nice to have, at least when you think about a coaching staff coming in. At least the Broncos can sit here and say, hey, look at this rookie class. Let's build around them, and let's see what we can do with this team. I mean, it's not like they're the worst roster in football. And so there's at least some promise with some of that. So I'll give that as my stock up for this week.
Yeah, I can't disagree. There are some good. Yeah, forward progress. I got you. It's all good. Yeah, for sure. I cannot disagree. That's a good point. Young pieces. I mean, still, I would argue that as we've seen, the Cleveland Browns are probably a much better situation, which stinks. And you got the Packers, who have Aaron Rodgers and some young pieces that I think people are kind of sleeping on. But yeah, that's a big deal. For me, loss of down this week. I'm going to go back to basics for the Huddle Up podcast. Broncos not executing. And the 2 main areas where you can see they're not executing on the field, from discipline and carrying out game plan. Broncos lost the turnover battle 2-0, which is unacceptable. They gave up a special teams touchdown, unacceptable. And they really lost the penalty battle this week. 11 penalties for 91 yards. So that's a team that, I mean, they might be out there playing hard, but they're not playing smart. And that was the difference in the game. I mean, the Broncos had more yardage in this game. The time of possession was different by like 20 seconds, not a big deal. The Broncos had more first downs, but if you're giving up special teams touchdowns, you're giving up, losing the turnover battle, and you're getting smacked in the penalty game to the Raiders, who's one of the most undisciplined teams in history. I mean, every year they feel like they're top 10 in penalties, top 3. That you're going to lose football games. So just discipline, playing smart was down the toilet this week.
Yeah, I was going to mention turnovers. I mean, it just – when they were having their nice little win streak going and beating some tough teams, they were protecting the football. Yeah. And it's just like they've gone back to what they were doing when they had that terrible losing streak. And I understand the team's gotten a little bit more desperate. They don't have quite as much talent because of injuries, all those kind of things that play into it. But they've just been forcing some plays that you're just going, what were you even seeing? I mean, there's just nothing there, and they're still – I don't know. So it's just been very, very frustrating to see some of what's been going on with this team. And just like you said, I mean, when they're getting undisciplined, one that shines very brightly on the coaching staff. I mean, those are the guys that are supposed to be training up these guys not to be doing these stupid things. And left and right, I mean, we're just seeing them completely destroy drives. I mean, how can you score when you're getting that many penalties? And, I mean, you're just making it, I mean, what was it on the interception? It was like 3rd and 26 or something like that.
Yeah, just stupid.
And there's false start, holding. There's just, stupid things that didn't need to happen and led to a very, very stupid throw. And very, very short field for the Raiders. So it's just not what you hope for when you're seeing this team. And makes you have to think that the next coach that's coming in, you're going to want a guy that's going to bring discipline. You're going to want a guy that's going to really get this team back in shape and say, okay, you guys got to do whatever you wanted to do this last coaching staff. Now we're going to do it my way.
Yeah. Speaking of, before we move on here, the new coaching staff, I mean, everybody should know by now Vance Joseph is moving on after the season. Probably back to the Bengals, going under Marvin Lewis. I don't know what it is with the Bengals collecting not good coaches. I mean, they got Hugh Jackson, now they're going to get Vance Joseph. But I'm curious who your pick was for the Broncos coaching staff. I wrote my piece and been driving and doing family stuff, so I haven't got a chance to read it yet. But who was your pick? If you could pick somebody, maybe a dark horse. I tried to write about somebody different, even though we had 2 or 3 writers write about David Tobe. So I mean, come on, guys. But who was your guy that you went to bat for?
I went for Schwartz.
Jim Schwartz. Okay.
And I sit here and talk about discipline, and that was one of his biggest issues when he was in Detroit.
Yeah.
But I feel like he's one of those guys that has really grown since then. Yeah. I just think I love his mind. I was reading an article the other day, and they were talking about coaches will be trying to leave for the day, and he will call them into his office and say, hey, I'm watching this, and I just want to kind of talk with you about this and kind of teach you something on this. And I love that he's a very big time teaching coach. Yeah. And you look at, I mean, the Eagles, since he's been there, they've been a very, very good defense. I mean, they helped carry them to the Super Bowl. Yeah, they didn't play that great in the Super Bowl, but beyond that, I mean, they really did beyond Nick Foles. I know most people kind of point towards him in that Super Bowl run, but really that defense is what got him there.
Defense and offensive line.
Yep.
Yeah,
exactly. And he does some things on defense that just make me go, wow, that's pretty smart. And I haven't been able to say that about the Broncos a whole lot here for a while. And I know he'll be head coach. So that's a little bit different, but I just think he's one of those guys. He brings an attitude for one. And I think that's something that our defense especially will respond to that they haven't had with Vance Joseph. I think he's a guy that really holds guys accountable for what they're doing. And I don't know. There's something about him that just really sticks out to me.
All right. Well, I mean, a lot of times second chance is big for these guys. And, Bill Belichick's a classic example of that. John Fox, honestly, I would take a John Fox right now, a stabilizer and a team builder. That would be huge for this team. I mean, he's not good enough to get you over the hump, most likely. And there was some talk about Peyton Manning saying, this guy's gone or I'm gone when it came to John Fox kind of holding this team back. But, yeah, I feel like that would be a good stabilizing force for this team. I am interested to see what he would do with switching the defense. In theory, as somebody who likes to play team builder, that would be fun to discuss, going from more of a 3-4 to a 4-3. But that might not be the best for the team's current roster. We'll see. A lot of guys don't really fit that as well. Like you're talking about Adam Gotsis being a guy that was playing well, playing better down the stretch. I do think he can play 3-tech, but do you want him there full time? I feel like he does his best work at 4 and 5. Honestly, he can do 3 though.
Yeah.
So that's something to think about. For me, I actually went with a dark horse that I know that the Broncos probably will not hire in, but he's somebody that I think they should give a look at. Just a little preface here. A lot of times, I'm sure many of you listeners know this. If you haven't noticed this trend by now, once I say this, it'll be like, oh yeah, duh, that makes sense. But teams, when they hire coaches, and no coach typically ever is great forever. At some point, you're going to get fired. The Batman quote: "You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain." That happens with coaches in pretty much all situations. But teams typically, if they go from an experienced coach, if that fails, they'll look for a younger guy. And if the young guy fails, they'll go for the experienced guy, and round and round and round we go. And I think that's stupid. Every single time you're looking for a new head coaching new head coach, you should look for the best guy that fits you, that blows you off your feet in the interview. I don't care if he's experienced. I don't care if he's green. I want to get the best guy in here, and the reason I'm saying this is because the guy I'm saying is kind of green as far as head coaching experience goes. But I really think the Broncos should look at and give a shot to Brian Schottenheimer. Brian Schottenheimer is right now the offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks, and if you haven't noticed, the Seattle Seahawks have been playing some pretty good smash-mouth football. They have the best offensive line they've had in a long time. Russell Wilson's actually been one of the least pressured quarterbacks in the league this year. And Schottenheimer, I think, has really developed an offense that fits what this team wants to do. They've developed an identity, and he's playing their players to their strengths, which is something that just Denver has not done. Gosh, when's the last time this offense played their players to their strengths? I mean, seriously. And I really like Schottenheimer. I mean, he has some experience around the league. He's been an offensive coordinator for multiple teams. He's been a quarterback coach for the Redskins, the Chargers, the Colts. So he's been around some good people. He's been an offensive coordinator for the Jets, the Rams, and the Georgia Bulldogs. And he has the bloodlines as well. He's the son of Marty Schottenheimer, who was a really good coach for a long time, as well as his uncle is Kurt Schottenheimer. So I've been really impressed with Brian Schottenheimer. I think he's done a really good job turning around that Seattle team. And the Seattle team's been pretty underrated. I mean, a lot of people this season coming into the year thought Seattle was going to be picking top 5 in the NFL draft. Well, here they are. They're a team. I think they're going to the playoffs. So I think Brian Schottenheimer, maybe he won't be the guy who gets the job, but I would be very interested in giving him an interview and letting him impress me. Something I think the Broncos have done in their last few head coaching searches is that they have their guy before the interviews even started. And I think that's a mistake. You need to actually use the interviews to your advantage. Don't just go through the motions. Ask these guys questions. Really, let yourself fall in love with somebody. And I would love to see them do that and give Brian Schottenheimer a chance.
I like that choice. I really do.
Yeah, and I haven't heard many people talk about him.
Yeah. No, so, I mean, that makes a lot of sense there. I can't disagree with anything you said, and I completely agree. I don't think you can go into this coaching hire with a front runner.
Yeah.
Because I think that makes you biased towards anything that they say, kind of like they did with Vance Joseph. They wanted him last time around to be defensive coordinator, and obviously that didn't happen, but they really loved his interview from the last time, and they just got really, really set on him. And I know there was some talk that when Shanahan came in, this is Kyle Shanahan, that he blew the Broncos away with what he came in with. And I think the bias towards Vance Joseph really hurt that. And I'm not saying Kyle Shanahan would have been the right choice at coach, but you're seeing some of the things that he's doing with the 49ers with now their third or fourth string quarterback. And some of those things I'm sitting here going, man, that would have been nice here in Denver.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree. A little bit of envy there. I'm a little more envious of Sean McVay, but Mike Shanahan would have been a better head coaching choice than Vance Joseph. And I've been, critical of fans calling for Mike Shanahan just because I am the gate guard of rosy retrospection. Just because he's got the name and everything doesn't mean he's going to be good. That's far too often. Hey, I recognize that person. That means he must be good. Happens all the time in free agency. Broncos would be better if TJ Ward was still on this team. TJ Ward played 2 snaps for the Bucs. It was time to move on.
Yeah.
Sorry. But yeah, no, I can't. I'm interested, and we'll see where we go. I'm interested in a number of guys, but it'll be fun to follow. I'm a little bit nervous because I don't love this pool, and we'll see if John Harbaugh does become available. There's talk that he won't. There's talk that he will. Maybe he could be traded. We'll see. Maybe Mike Tomlin. That's a possibility as well. I doubt it, but you never know. So it'll be interesting to follow, and I didn't have much of an opinion on it before, but I figured it was a chance to give a shout out to Schottenheimer, a guy that a young offensive mind that I think is on the up and up and deserves a shout out at least.
Yeah. So I have a question for you then.
Okay.
Which is more important to a team, head coach or offensive defensive coordinator?
I would say for a single season, I would say the offensive and defensive coordinator. But if we're thinking big picture here, I would say the head coach, because if the offensive and defensive coordinators are good, they're going to go.
Right.
So stability, identity, team structure, I would go for a head coach. But a single season, if you have a great offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, that'll make a world of difference. But if those guys are that good of a difference maker, they're going on to greener pastures, bigger paychecks, more power, better opportunity.
Yeah, I guess for me, the reason I ask that is because honestly, as much as we're going to talk about the head coach and who that's going to be, and I'm almost more interested in who he brings in as coordinators.
Absolutely. Yep. I cannot disagree with you at all. So we'll talk about some of those names when that time comes. I am very interested in his name is all of a sudden escaping me. I just had it on me. The running game specialist for the 49ers. McDonald?
Yeah.
Yes, he's somebody that has caught my eye as well. He's not ready for the big time yet of a head coaching position, but he's done a lot of people that I've spoken with speak very highly of him. He's a Shanahan disciple, so he's going to bring that West Coast offense in here, and he's a very smart kid, played some football, went to Yale, so I'm very interested by him. So we will see, but it totally depends on who the head coach is, but I just hope they get this right, because they have not gotten it right for too long at head coach and the other coaches, unfortunately. Right. But I also hope they don't get rid of some of these positional coaches as well. Some of these guys deserve another chance. Running back coach, interior offensive line coach, defensive line coach. Those guys deserve to stick around for another year. I would add our wide receiver coach.
Yes. With how well these rookies are playing here at the end of the year.
Yes, I can't disagree. And okay, now we got to talk about the injuries. The main one we're going to talk about here, Philip Lindsay, injured to his wrist. He's going to be out 3 to 4 months. He's probably not going to go to the Pro Bowl, and he might even miss early offseason stuff. Hopefully he'll be back. I think it was OTAs, but he's going to miss some stuff. And the big thing with Lindsay, the smallness factor that a lot of people were worried about. We didn't want to get into too much. He's Mighty Mouse playing great football, but it was going to be durability. And now he has this wrist injury, which is kind of a weird one. Let's be real. I mean, I haven't heard this happening very much with NFL players, so going to be worth monitoring going forward. And hopefully this is just a sporadic thing, but I hate to be that guy, but it's worth saying, hey, this was the reason that he fell in the draft. It's not that he's not a good running back. It's not that he's fast. He's faster than I thought he would be. Let's be real. But it's that size, and can he hang in the NFL at that size given durability concerns? And this is the first injury, so just worth throwing it out there. I don't want to put bad juju on him or sprinkle some negativity over the holidays, but it's worth being said. Any other injuries stick out to you?
No, I mean, obviously that's the main one because he has been pretty much our offense all year.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you lose that, and it's what else is there to get too excited about? I mean, like I said, you got the rookie receivers that I'm excited to watch from this last game and see what they can bring to the table. Honestly, at this point, I am getting some of our bigger name players. Von Miller, I'm not playing him a whole lot against the Chargers.
Oh, man. Like a preseason week 1 game. He goes out the first drive.
Yep.
That's it. I'm sorry. Maybe that's bad. I know people paid for tickets, but I'd rather watch Von Miller compete next year. If he tore his ACL in a game that didn't matter, oh my God, I'm going to come for somebody's head.
Vance Joseph might not make it out of town.
Oh, I can't
say. I'm not trying to say that would be good, but I'm just fans would. A riot would break out. That's for sure.
Honestly, if they're planning on Case Keenum potentially being a starter next year or a transitional starter to a rookie, maybe they should get Kevin Hogan in there. I mean, gosh, what do they have to lose?
Draft position.
That's
the main thing you got to lose in this game, other than players going down and possibly being out for. I mean, we're seeing it with Sanders. I mean, he might not even be on the team next year because of the injury he sustained. And at that time, yes, the team was still in the playoff race and everything else, so that's a little bit different. But you think about that now with, like you said, Von Miller, Derek Wolfe, just some of these other guys that you're just I know these are future guys for us.
Yeah,
I'm with you. I'm playing this more like a preseason game, and you want to get some of your youth out there, get them some snaps. This is your opportunity. This game has very little meaning in the big sense of a win getting us to somewhere good. I mean, It gives you some nice, I guess, momentum heading into next year if you can win a game against a tough team like the Chargers. But still, beyond that, there's not much advantage of winning this game. And I'm not trying to sit here and say, please Broncos lose or anything like that. I'll cheer for a win every single time.
Yeah.
But it's still, you got to start thinking about the future too. And there's more at stake than the short term of a victory against the Chargers.
Yeah, last year, going into the last game of the season, the Broncos had to have some things go their ways, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers kind of a fun fact here. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, team that's also looked like garbage. I mean, a team that's worse than the Broncos. They were a team that was scheduled to pick above the Broncos. They won the Week 17 game, and they went from the 5th overall pick to the 9th overall pick. If they hadn't, Broncos would not have Bradley Chubb today. Bradley Chubb would be a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. And so that's did they fall? They might have fallen farther than 9. They were up there and they fell way down. So it's worth mentioning the draft position. I mean, I hate to be that guy. I know some fans hate that so much. Probably some people logged off. These people are calling for tanking. We're not calling for tanking. We're just calling for not putting your future dependent veterans out there because you can't lose them for next year. And it's more about evaluating. So, yeah, we'll see. Right now, the Broncos, this is a nice little transition here. Actually, we'll come back to this. We'll come back to a little bit of draft talk. We got to talk a little bit of Chargers first. Looking over this roster, I can't believe the Chargers got spanked like they did last week. Did you get a chance to watch much of this Chargers-Ravens game?
I did, actually.
Man, this Ravens defense, give me Ravens-Bears Super Bowl. Screw everyone else. I want it to be 10-0. Like, if that's the final outcome, give it to me. This Ravens defense is playing lights out football. I mean, holding this Chargers team to 10 points, that's pretty good. I mean, I know the Chargers have had some injuries. Keenan Allen's a little hobbled up, et cetera. But, man, that's a pretty special game, and I think that makes it all the more likely that the Chargers come in this week refocused. This got to take care of business, and especially because the Broncos beat them last time, I think they're going to come in and give the Broncos everything they can handle, and it's going to be maybe a close game, but I don't think the Broncos are going to be able to sustain the level of play that the Chargers are going to put up.
Right. Well, and that's I remember somebody posted something on Facebook about the rookie quarterbacks and Lamar Jackson having this incredible record as a starting quarterback, and I'm sitting here going, he is not the reason that they're winning. That defense is outstanding. You're right. That's just incredible what they're doing there. And they are a team that nobody wants to play in the playoffs. I can tell you that.
Yeah, it really reminds me of a better version of those Tebow teams where they are playing an offense that is just smash mouth and really just draining the clock. Like the possessions there's so limited possessions in those games, and then letting the defense take over. But it's a more so extent because that defense is better and Lamar Jackson's better. So that's kind of what it reminds me of. But I agree with you. It's complimentary football. Right.
But no, you're right. This Chargers team, and it's always amazing. It's very much a what have you done for me lately league.
Yeah.
And so they lose, and everybody goes, "Oh, these Chargers, they're nothing. They're trash." I'm going, they just beat the Chiefs the week before.
In Arrowhead.
In Arrowhead. So it's kind of how the league goes sometimes, especially when the top teams are playing each other. And it was kind of, that was an emotional game. They're playing the Chiefs. And it's hard to have that same emotion come into the next game. And so it doesn't really surprise me that they lost. But they're still a very, very good team. We've talked about it on this podcast before that they are an underrated roster. And most any other division, they would be the top team in the division. They just happen to have the Chiefs in their division. But you look at the weapons, like you said, Keenan Allen's a little bit hobbled, but he's still very, very good receiver. Mike Williams is really becoming a huge weapon for them. I've talked about it on here before of how much I did not like him as a player. It wasn't because I didn't think he'd be a good receiver. It's just I never saw him as a top tier number one receiver. And that's where the Chargers took him. And he's a touchdown machine. And that's what I thought he would be.
He is just an absolute phenomenal jump ball kid.
Right.
His ability to go up and get it and contort his body. We talk about Cortland Sutton being that, but Mike Williams is a better version of that. Let's call it what it is, at least at this point.
And see, that's what I saw. I saw Cortland Sutton as a little bit more athletic version of Mike Williams, but not quite the jump ball version of Mike Williams. And so I'd rather have Cortland Sutton than Mike Williams just because I think Cortland Sutton can be a little bit more all-around kind of receiver. But again, Mike Williams, when you get to the red zone, he's about unstoppable. You just throw it up and this guy's going to be the one that comes down with it. And really, I think the Chargers probably have the most diverse weaponry of any team in the NFL. You've talked about it before of wide receivers. If you want that basketball kind of mentality of You got your point guard, you got your shooting guard, you got your big man that can jump up and make plays, and they have all of that. I mean, They got their all-around guy in Keenan Allen, sorry. Tyrell Williams is their big speed guy. Travis Benjamin brings speed. Mike Williams is their big man up in the middle. It's a fun group to watch. And if they had Hunter Henry,
sorry, I was waiting for the joke, man. If you weren't going to say it, like the guy you need to watch out for this week, Hunter Henry. How Al Wilson matches up against Hunter Henry could determine this game. We need to bring down Brian Dawkins.
I know. Oh man, I really thought about saying it, but I mean, again, that was a big injury for them, and I mean, I can't imagine, especially the red zone with that kind of weaponry. Oh my goodness! And then you throw in, they've had a pretty good offensive line, not the best offensive line, but I mean, it's a serviceable offensive line.
Quarterback helps a lot.
Yeah, Phillip Rivers, he's having one of his best years of his career, if not his best year. Melvin Gordon is really rounding out his game. He's not just a big receiving or a big play kind of threat. He's an actual all-around running back for them. It's a tough team to really match up against, especially on that offense. And then they play very good complementary football with that defense because they have great pass rushers once that offense gets a lead, and they can really attack you.
Yeah, you said it, but you talked about the offense. I won't go too far on that. Although I do really think that Russell Okung was a guy that the Broncos, in hindsight, shouldn't have let walk. Maybe because of his contract, his injury history. I don't know. Maybe they should have. But I thought he was dogged for issues that were well beyond him. And, he's played very well over there in Los Angeles / San Diego when he's over there. So, yeah, moving on to the defense for myself here. You touched on it. These pass rushers, the Chargers are kind of weak up the middle. But on the edges, on the defensive line and in cornerback, they're pretty talented. You got Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram. Joey Bosa, healthy as he's been all season, coming back from an injury. Melvin Ingram, very underrated pass rusher. They make probably they're one of the top 3 edge rushing duos in the NFL. It's either them, the Broncos, or the Texans. And I pick your poison. Any of those would be good picks. But then they got secondary that the Broncos just do not have. They have obviously Desmond King, who's a punt returner and kick returner for them. Very talented. He plays that slot position. He can kind of play some overhang as well, kind of a safety spot. But he is really talented. I didn't know he didn't run the best 40, but that dude's a football player. He finds the ball. You got to watch out for him. Casey Hayward, he's not having the best season for them, but he's very talented on the outside. He's a true cornerback, number 1, a top 15 level cornerback, and he's been playing good football there. And then obviously the guy who brings it all together is Derwin James, still my pick for the Defensive Rookie of the Year. Just an absolute freak. I mean, is he playing cornerback? Is he playing edge rusher? Is he a linebacker? Is he a free safety? Is he a box safety? Is he playing a cover 2, cover 1, man coverage, zone coverage? I mean, Derwin James can literally do it all. He's an absolute freak, and he just makes this entire defense tick with those edge rushers in front of him. But they are kind of soft at the middle. I mean, there's been talk about the Chargers, if they're going anywhere this year, obviously the chance for a quarterback, etc., if they want to go there. Although with Justin Herbert returning, that may not be the best decision because this quarterback class looks worse by the day. But up the middle, this defense is not great. Darius Phillon is not great. You got Brandon Mebane, who's an older guy who played on that Seahawks team. Big guy, but just really lacks talent. Justin Jones, they drafted last year, but defensive tackle is a position they're just not very talented at. And then linebacker, you got Uchenna Nwosu, kind of plays edge rusher linebacker, not great. They did lose Denzel Perryman, which hurt them a lot, but I mean, still, yeah. Kyle Emanuel not played great for them, and then Tavis Brown is a fun player, a lot of energy, but very small and can get washed away. Almost one of those safety linebacker hybrids, where if he didn't play kind of in that weak side chase linebacker role, he would not really have a spot. So, yeah, it's a pretty good team. I think it's a well-rounded team. I am still pretty surprised they lost 22-10 to the Ravens. Give credit to the Ravens, especially that defense. Zadarius Smith, I think, is one of the top 3 players in the NFL in quarterback hits this year. Like, did you know that? Zadarius Smith has been killing it.
If you would ask me who are the top 3 guys, I would not have said his name for sure.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a free agent this year. I remember him coming out. He was the pass rusher that was less heralded on the opposite side of Bud Dupree coming out that year. if you recall those Kentucky edge rushers.
Yep.
So yeah, he's been killing it for him. I remember watching him a couple games and he's been great. Anyway, we're talking about the Ravens now. Bring it back to the Chargers. But yeah, no, it's a pretty good team. I think they probably will not. The Chiefs are playing the Raiders, so it'd be awesome if the Raiders can beat the Chiefs because that would push the Raiders down even further down the draft, which I'm all about. But I think probably the Chiefs will win, and that means the Chargers will be the team. Unfortunately, with the 5th seed in the AFC. And that would have them, gosh, who knows what that means? They could be playing the Texans. They could be playing the Patriots. They could be playing the Steelers. They could be playing the Ravens. Like, who knows? But AFC is still up in the air as far as the playoff seedings go. But Chargers are a good team. Roster's good. They've had some injuries. Still could add some pieces. And they're missing Hunter Henry. Melvin Gordon's been injured, et cetera, et cetera. But pretty good team. Pretty darn good team.
Yeah, I'm jealous.
Yeah.
We've said that a lot this year. There's just a lot of good teams the Broncos have played. I mean, they're playing some of the better divisions in football right now. And I mean, and most of them have a quarterback. That's the main thing. When you got a guy like Phillip Rivers, as much as we talked about last time when we played him, we don't dislike him. There's a level of respect, I guess, for his energy and attitude, and just, I mean, the guy never quits. No. Absolutely never quits. And so you got to have a little bit of respect for what he does.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you got to be right there. All right, we're not actually going to get too much into the statistics this week, but we can get into some key matchups here for this game. And number one for me, I'm going to be really watching Bradley Chubb and Von Miller when they play, but mainly Bradley Chubb. And I'm curious to see if he can. I don't think he's going to break the sack record. I don't think it's going to happen. If there was a week, there's probably last week where he really needed to make a notch in it, and it just didn't happen. Which, I mean, what can you do when they're controlling the flow of the game like that, and your offense is just absolutely putrid, and you're not really given much of a chance to rush the quarterback because your team is automatically behind. So, but I'm watching Bradley Chubb this week going up against Russell Okung, one of the better left tackles in football. And I'm hoping that he can come away with at least one sack. I don't think he's going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year, but he's going to be up there, and he's still one of the key pieces, the core piece for this team going forward. And if there's anything you should take away from the season, I even think even more than Philip Lindsay, I think we should be excited about Bradley Chubb playing opposite of Von Miller. I think that's the best takeaway I have for this season.
Yeah. I think one of the key matchups for me in this one is going to be the rookie receivers against this good secondary. If they can match what they did this last week, I'll be very, very excited about what they can bring next year. This is a much better secondary than what the Raiders had for sure. But like I said, they've been improving every week. And I'm interested to see how they handle this uptick and playing some of these, like you said, Desmond King. The guy is one of the more underrated cornerbacks in football right now. And, of course, Derwin James, Casey Hayward. I mean, this is a really good secondary. So if they can make some plays against this group, I mean, it definitely bodes well for next season.
Good pick. I'll do another one here, then I'll give you another one. The Broncos not edge rushers. The Chargers edge rushers versus the Broncos tackles. Again, kind of looking at the same position again, but on the other side. Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram. I mean, like I said earlier, one of the best edge rushing duos in the NFL. Both those guys can get after the quarterback, and Case Keenum is looking like he's seeing ghosts. Part of this is because the offense Musgrave is running, where he's running a lot of vertical concepts and not really using Keenum to his strengths, but still, it's a good chance to assess the talent of these guys. And it's another test for Garrett Bowles, who's had just quite the gauntlet down the stretch. I still don't think, he's not a top tier offensive tackle for sure, but I think he's emerging as a top 30 offensive tackle when you include right tackles and left tackles. And this is just another huge test for him. I mean, he's really had some serious tests the second half of the season, and for the most part, he's held up. So this is a big game for him, Ingram and Bosa. And I'm also interested to see Valdir on the opposite side. If they do decide to play him, maybe they're going to do some shifting around to protect some of these older guys. But Valdir, I think he's played admirably at right tackle, and I'm interested to see how he plays. And if he's a guy that is he worth bringing back next year, I'm going to let the market decide that. I don't really have a strong opinion on that yet, but he's definitely one to watch, and he's an option. And he's been the best right tackle the Broncos have had in a long while. He hasn't been great by any means, but he's been solid, and he's been a solidifying presence over there at right tackle.
All right, well, I'm going to go just because I want to see Booker and Freeman and what they can do now that Phillip Lindsay's gone. I mean, can one of these guys really emerge as that number 2 option for the Broncos moving forward? And I mean, obviously Freeman, he was looking better earlier in the year. You talked about that earlier, and so far hasn't looked as good since the injury. Can he really step up in this game? Because I'm guessing he's going to be the starter. I'm guessing. I mean, I haven't heard them announce that quite yet or not, but again, and Booker, I mean, he's showing well. Is this a guy that can really show that he's upped his game to that next level that the Broncos were thinking when they got him? That maybe he's starting to finally get some vision in his running and can be that great third down option for the Broncos moving forward, because right now they absolutely need that. And I mean, especially Keenum with how much he's been under pressure, it's nice to have that little outlet where he can go make a guy miss in the open field and pick up a tough first down for the Broncos, because they need somebody that can make a play. Phillip Lindsay was that guy. They depended on him for the big play. And with him gone, who is that guy that's going to step up and be that guy?
Yeah, interesting indeed. All right, well, we're going to move on now, and we're actually going to talk a little bit of NFL draft. And the Broncos right now, they sit with the 12th overall pick in the draft. They could move all the way up to 7. Probably not likely. They need a lot of things to go their way for that to happen. But there's a strong chance that they could finish the top 10 pick. And I think that would be a very good thing for them. Obviously, it's not a top 5 pick. There's a difference between 5 and 10 that's gigantic. I mean, just look at the draft trade chart, how much it would cost to move from 10 to 5. It's worth, I think, a second-round pick. So that's a pretty valuable player, actually. So that's a big difference, but still, the difference between picking what they could be, I think it's as low as 17 if they win, and a lot of those teams underneath them lose. So hopefully the Broncos, can maybe get in that top 10 spot and have a look at some players here. But yeah, so who are some players right now at 10? We kind of talked about this a little bit last week, but it's worth coming back to, especially because we're going to be talking about it a lot going forward. Who are some players at 10 that you're looking forward to, and who are some that you are just very apprehensive about at that pick?
Well, I mean, if we're talking quarterback, Dwayne Haskins is really the only guy there at 10 that I would be really okay with.
Yeah.
Behind him, I mean, I like Drew Lock, but not at 10. Yeah. I think that would be a big mistake for the Broncos if they decided to go that direction. That would really bother me. The inside linebackers kind of depends if they come out or not. Devin White is another guy that I'm a little bit apprehensive, just because he's more athlete than he is finished product.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this past year, one of the great things the Broncos did was they drafted a lot of very technical, further along in their development kind of guys.
Yeah.
And Devin White kind of goes against that kind of mindset. Raekwon Davis is another that I'd be pretty apprehensive about.
Yeah, I don't think he's a first round. I don't know if I'll give him a first round grade just because his pass rushing ability is so low.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. Guys, I'd really love Deontay Thompson. We talked about him on the last show, just a guy that can really take over the middle of that defense and on the back end and just be a huge playmaker for him. I think he is one of those guys. I don't really have many concerns other than maybe sometimes with Alabama players, they get overworked and so they have injuries. But beyond that, I think he will be a huge playmaker. Jonah Williams,
a first-year starter.
Yeah. So he would be.
Starter.
If we decide to move on from the tackle position, we don't get anybody in free agency, Jonah Williams is another guy that I have no questions about. Yeah. I know you've heard some things about teams thinking about moving him inside. I'm keeping him a tackle. I mean, he's just one of the most technically sound tackles that has come out in probably the last, 5-7 years?
Maybe. I don't know. There was some pretty, like Ronnie Stanley came in and was pretty damn good immediately.
Yeah, but he'd be right in there for me. And so he's another guy that I think could maybe be there at 10. And you just plug and play him. I mean, he's going to start for you. Yeah. And you could either choose to put him there at right tackle because he played right tackle for Alabama and did great for him when he was a freshman, or you can plug him in at left tackle, maybe move Bulls over. I don't really like that idea. I'd rather move Williams over to right tackle. But those are some guys that really stick out. I mean, if you obviously get some of the top guys, Ed Oliver, if he falls, I have no questions about him. I think he'll be a special player. If he's there at 10, you run to the podium.
Yeah.
And I'm torn a little bit. I mean, Greedy Williams is kind of one of those middle guys for me.
I feel like what I've heard about work ethic and stuff, and based on the Broncos' change in draft philosophy about drafting team leaders and high floor players, it makes me think that Greedy Williams is not going to be as high on their board, at least in the top 10.
Yeah.
I don't think any cornerback in this draft class will be.
Right. No, I agree. So him at 10, I'd be a little leery about, like you said, just wondering some of the work ethic things. But otherwise, I mean, some of the other guys, I can't think of anybody else that really sticks out that I'd really want there at 10.
You have one for me. I have one that stands out to me that you did not say that I love his game, and I think he could be a special player, and that is defensive lineman Jeffrey Simmons from Mississippi State. He does have that off-field issue that he had before he came to Mississippi State, but since then he's been a community leader, an academic All-American, and it's something that he's going to have to answer for, and you're going to hear about it 10,000 times as we come to the draft. But I think he's a top 5, top 10 level player, and he could play 3 technique, 1 technique, 0 technique, maybe even some 4 and 5 if you need to. But he is just such a physical force on the inside, and I haven't seen a defensive lineman double and triple teamed as much as I've seen him. And he's still, I mean, when that happens, he's smart enough to not just kind of get beaten and kind of fall down. He will watch the play. He'll get his arms up. I think he had to be one of the leaders in pass breakups for defensive linemen this year because he batted down a lot of balls. But he'll also read the plays and then chase down screens. I mean, he feels it right away when those offensive linemen kind of slip past him. He's like, oh, this is too easy. And then you see him get the next running back. I mean, at some point in the NFL, he's going to pick off a screen pass because he was close on a few of them this year. So Jeffrey Simmons would be my other one. I can't disagree with you, though, man. If we could get Ed Oliver or Jeffrey Simmons round 1 and then get a cornerback round 2, or maybe, I don't know, Bryce Hall is one that comes to mind. That would be absolutely incredible. And maybe that'll happen. Maybe I'm just dreaming right now, but that's where I'm at right now. That would be my dream. I would love one of those 2 defensive linemen. And, people be like, oh, well, Broncos need quarterback. Broncos need cornerback. Well, guess what? This team is more than a quarterback or a cornerback away, unless that quarterback's Peyton Manning, which, guess what, guys? That's a once-in-a-lifetime kind of thing.
Right. And it's so many people forget there's more beyond the first round.
Yeah, that too.
I mean, and there's going to be a lot that's going on in free agency. The Broncos are going to have a ton of money. So when we're sitting here talking about some of these players and saying, oh, why didn't they go after quarterback? Why aren't you talking about the quarterbacks more? Or any other position that people just go, we have to have this. Cornerback, you mentioned that. That's going to be a big one that people are like, you have to draft that position. No, that's how you find your team in absolute trouble.
Yep.
If you get so locked in, we have to draft this one position, no matter what kind of talent is there compared to the other talent at other positions. Like I said, you're just setting yourself up for absolute trouble. And I'm not one that wants to fall into that. The Broncos went with best players this last draft. And, I mean, look what they got. They have a lot of starters, a lot of guys that they can build around. This was absolutely their best draft class since 2011 with Von Miller. And it can help spring forward this team moving forward. And if they can put 2 drafts together in a row, that's how you build an incredible depth that can even take a quarterback like Case Keenum and make him at least serviceable enough to make them a playoff contender. So, like you said, if they can get a Jeffrey Simmons, an Ed Oliver, and then a starting level cornerback in the second round, because I think that's where maybe you're going to find more value cornerback wise there in the second round than compared to the first round.
Yeah.
Or you can go get a guy in free agency, whatever, something there. And that defense all of a sudden becomes a force. I mean, you've talked about your boy, Chris Jones.
Oh my gosh.
You get a Chris Jones kind of, I know, I'm sorry. I have to mention, but I mean, that's what I'm kind of picturing with Ed Oliver or Jeffrey Simmons. You get that kind of talent in between our pass rushers and quarterbacks. I mean, they're just sitting there going, what are we doing?
Yeah.
We stand no chance. You can't block all 3 of them. You don't have to send blitzes because you got 3 guys that they can't double. And you you get this defense back to maybe I don't think you can get it back to the 2015 level.
That's the top 5 defense all time.
Right, exactly.
Like people keep saying, well, we won the 2015 draft with a bad offense. Like, well, point to me how many times you have a top 5 defense all time. Like,
right.
That's
but I mean, you can win a lot of games. I mean, you talked about it with the Ravens this year.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson is not a great quarterback.
No.
They have some weapons on offense. They have a pretty good offensive line. But beyond that, there's not much there. That defense is carrying that team. And the Broncos can have that again where what's a great way to go up against some of these great offenses that the Broncos have to face in the AFC West especially? Get yourself a great defense. Make those quarterbacks uncomfortable. Specifically
pass rush.
Right, exactly. And you got enough to hold up on the back end, just enough to give them time to get there. And it's a good time to be a Bronco fan. So, I mean, it's again, you can't just get locked on to one position.
No.
But I have a draft question for you then.
Okay.
So, I mean, just thinking about the most important position, the quarterback, and I think you're with me that Dwayne Haskins is probably the one guy that's worth anything in this draft, at least thinking that he could be a future big-time quarterback.
I do think Locke has potential. I really do. But I think he has potential in the same vein that I thought Paxton Lynch had potential.
Yeah.
You know, he's a guy that if the Broncos ended up taking him, I would talk myself into him because, you know, honestly, I cheer for this team. I have to.
Right.
But on the outside looking in right now, there are so many fatal flaws in his game that if you're taking him top 10, I am crapping my pants scared. You know, like I am just like, oh my God, please don't take, like going in the draft, just please don't take Locke. Just don't make me have to go through that. Because I my gut tells me no. You know, like I don't see it.
Yeah. If he's there at the back end of round 1,
oh, absolutely.
Then I'm thinking, we trade up and get this guy because I think he's worth that kind of risk.
Yeah.
But yeah, top at 10, especially with some of the players that are in this draft that could be there at 10.
He's going top 10. He is. He's going to go top 10 with Justin Herbert gone now.
It's true. That's true. But is Dwayne Haskins one of those guys that's worth trading up for?
I think he is, but I think the cost from trading up from 10 to probably 2, I think it'd probably be 2, might be too high because of the uncertainty factor with Haskins. I mean, he still does have just one year of tape, period. And there's a chance that this could be an aberration. I mean, you want to bank on the tools and you got to see the guy on the whiteboard and everything like that as that process leads up. But still, there's some questions there. There's some concerns. So he is my quarterback 1. And if the trade is there to move up, I would be definitely interested in doing it. But it all comes down to the price. And I can't tell you right now what price would be too high or what price would be too right. But I can tell you that there are enough concerns there, enough questions in his game that I'd be a little bit apprehensive. I think your best bet, as painful as this would be, and something that I don't know if the fans, let alone, or John Elway, let alone the fans, have patience to do, but perhaps your best bet would be just to take the board, go best player available this year, and look towards the 2020 class that looks much better at quarterback, much deeper, much more talented, many more options, rather than Dwayne Haskins tier 1, nothing at tier 2, Drew Lock tier 3, nothing at tier 4, and then Greer, Jones, Ripien, etc. So, yeah, sorry, did I interrupt you? Was that your question? Did I answer?
Well, no, that is my question. Is just how much is he worth trading up for? Is he even a guy that's worth trading up for?
It would depend on the price. It would depend where we're picking. But
I mean, for me, if I'm making that decision that I'm trading up into the top 5 for a quarterback, I'm only doing that if I see this guy as a top 5 receiver in the NFL.
Receiver. Oh my gosh.
Receiver. Sorry. Quarterback. Sorry.
He's real good.
I always have receiver on the mind. You know that.
Yeah, I know.
And, but do I see that in Dwayne Haskins? And I'm on the edge because there's things that he does that I sit here and say, I can see signs of like a Ben Roethlisberger in certain aspects. And I mean, just the way that he can move in the pocket, the way he can shake guys off. He's not the most athletic guy, but he can do enough with his legs. More his legs are there to buy him time in the pocket. He can be accurate on pretty much to every single level. He's got obviously enough arm talent to be a good guy. He improved as the season went on.
Improved a lot.
Yeah, improved a lot. And I've heard a lot of really good things about just the work that he does on the whiteboard. I've been hearing
teammates love him too.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of really good positives about this guy. But like you said, there's enough negatives that just, I would be excited if the Broncos traded up and got him.
Yeah.
But I would still have a little bit of hesitation going, oh my gosh. Does this set us back for the next 3-4 years? That's always the risk you're taking, obviously, when you're taking a quarterback, especially when you're trading up and giving up future assets to have to get up there, because you're going to have to give up another first-round pick.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of you giving up 3 first-round picks to get him.
Yeah. Like I said, there's a price where it's too much, and you're going to be competing with the Jags. You're going to be competing with the Giants. Hopefully, maybe, I don't know. I don't know what I want at this point. Honestly, do I want those teams to win so they just take them out of the Broncos' hands and just they don't even have a chance to do it, or do I want them to lose so the Broncos have that option? But am I concerned that they're going to make the wrong choice? I don't know at this point. I really don't know. It's such a dilemma, I guess, on this end. But we'll see. I do agree with you, though. Haskins is the guy that I would be okay doing that. I would have been okay doing that at Herbert. I would be so apprehensive about Locke if you're trading up to get him.
Yeah. So, like you said, he does remind me a lot of things with Paxton Lynch that I loved, that I fell in love with, and I've learned my lesson.
Yeah.
It really would be a matter of, Paxton Lynch's main problem was just his work ethic.
Yeah.
The guy could have been something if he decided he wanted to work at the game. And I don't know if he had the brains to actually be a top-tier quarterback. That's always been a big question with him, too. With Drew Lock, those are going to be the things, if I'm the Broncos, I'm sitting here saying, I have to ask these questions. I have to make sure I know this guy's going to be the hardest worker in the locker room.
Yeah.
All those kind of things, because otherwise I'm sitting there saying, nope, see you later. Somebody else can have fun with that.
Yep. Yeah, and I don't disagree. I'm just really, while I'm apprehensive about Locke, I've definitely been on the up with him as the season's progressed because, hey, he's played better as the season's progressed. I'm just very happy that the early midseason hype on Will Grier and Daniel Jones is not there right now. Because that's one of those things, you hear people talking about these players and, throwing out the stats, which is the worst, throwing out the stats. And I go and watch the tape and I'm like, gosh, I just do not see it with these guys. And now that we're getting to the point where NFL teams are putting out their opinions through a lot of the media people, those guys are starting to get pushed down a little bit. So that means that I'm not completely off bases. That's what counts. So we'll see. All right. Well, looking at we should get out of here in a second, but looking at the mock draftable Tankathon, not the mock draftable, the Tankathon mock draft, they have the Broncos picking 12th right now. Got them taking Drew Lock. So the Broncos don't trade up and Drew Lock falls in the lap and they take him. You know what? So be it. There's probably going to be somebody on the board I'd rather have, but picking at 12, that's probably about what it is. So we will see. Any parting thoughts before you want to get out of here?
No, I think we've kind of covered it, and we'll get more into this. We'll start looking beyond first round and start giving you a little more details on a lot of these guys. I'm excited to get into these conversations. You and I both. Yeah. This is what we wait for. As much as we love the season and hope for the Broncos to do well, this is what gets us up in the morning. We've been talking about it since last April. Let's be real. Yep. If people only saw some of our conversations.
All right. Well, before we do get out, prediction on the game.
I'm going to go Chargers 27, Broncos 17.
All right. I'm going to go Chargers 30, Broncos 20. All right, well, that's going to wrap up this week's episode of Building the Broncos. You can find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH and myself at Kendell MHH. Also, make sure you head over to Mile High Huddle, a new affiliate of 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports Digital, to find ours and our co-writers' articles and all things pertaining to your Denver Broncos. Head on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and comment. Your support can help us continue to bring you our Denver Bronco deep dives. We aren't just here to talk the news, but an in-depth analysis each week from team building, game planning, and now with the draft coming up, everything that pertains to your Denver Broncos. You can follow the Building of the Broncos podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to the Huddle Up podcast on iTunes and for Android users, Stitcher, as well as check us out on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle, and at Huddle Up Pod. Again, please be sure to subscribe and rate us and reach out to us, as we love interacting with fellow Bronco fans. For Carl Dumler, I'm Nick Kendell, wrapping up another episode of Building the Broncos podcast. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next week. Go Broncos.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.